Who would have thought that the January 6th committee suppressed exonerating evidence of Trump's push for National Guard?
What?
Yeah. Representative Liz Cheney's January 6th committee suppressed evidence that President Donald Trump pushed for 10,000 National Guard troops to protect the nation's capital. A previously hidden transcript obtained by the Federalist shows. Cheney and her committee falsely claimed they had no evidence to support Trump's officials claim that White House had communicated its desire for 10,000 National Guard troops. In fact, an early transcribed interview conducted by the committee included precisely that evidence from a key source. The interview, which Cheney attended and personally participated in, was suppressed from public release until now. So they knew that Trump called for the 10,000, and because she was there. Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato's first transcribed interview with the committee was conducted on January 28, 2022. In it, he told Cheney and her investigators that he overheard White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows push Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard troops as she needed to protect the city. He also testified President Trump had suggested 10,000 would be needed to keep the peace at the public rallies and protests scheduled for January 6, 2021. Ornato also described White House frustration with Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller's slow deployment of assistance on the afternoon of January 6, 2021. Not only did the committee not accurately characterize the interview, they suppressed the transcript from public review. On top of that, committee allies began publishing critical stories and even conspiracy theories about Ornato ahead of follow-up interviews with them.
Pre-bunked.
Ornato was a career Secret Service official who had been detailed to the security position in the White House. Cheney frequently points skeptics of her investigation to the government publishing office website that posted, she said, transcripts, documents, exhibits, and our meticulously sourced 800-plus page final report. That website provides supporting documents to the claims made by Cheney and fellow anti-Trump enthusiasts. However, transcripts of fewer than half of the 1,000 interviews the committee claims it conducted are posted on that site.
So she only meticulously ate about 800 pies is really what happened.
It is unclear how many of the hidden transcripts, including exonerating information, suppressed by the committee. Those documents support the committee's narrative rather than the truth of the events leading up to January 6, 2021, said Barry Loudermilk, chairman of the House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight. The former January 6 Select Committee apparently withheld Mr. Ornato's critical witness testimony from the American people because it contradicted their predetermined narrative. Mr. Ornato's testimony proves what Mr. Meadows has said all along. President Trump did, in fact, offer 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the U.S. Capitol, which was turned down. So it's almost like the establishment wanted a riot to happen. It's almost like they put FBI plants and Capitol Police and Metro Police inside the crowd to instigate this happening. And it's almost like the Capitol Police inside swung the doors wide open and took selfies with them. Oh, wait, they did do that.
You know, when I started to suspect, Jimmy, when they didn't have an actual trial and just had
they didn't have an actual trial.
Fat fuck daughter do a hearing on ABC that was like a guy that nobody gave a shit about, by the way. More people watch Yellowstone than that.
On January 6th, committee staffer asked Ornato, hey, when it comes to the National Guard statement about having 10,000 troops or any other number of troops, do you recall any discussion prior to the 6th about whether and how many National Guard troops to deploy on January 6th? Ornato surprised the committee by noting he did recall a conversation between Meadows and Bowser. He was on the phone, quote, he was on the phone with her and wanted to make sure she had everything that she needed. So this is exactly why what Kurt just said. They didn't have a real trial to try Donald Trump for insurrection or inciting an insurrection or for anything he did on January 6th because he didn't do the things they said. And it was all made up in an attempt to criminalize Donald Trump and their political opposition to the donor class, which happens to be Donald Trump. Sounds crazy that a billionaire is somehow an outsider, but he is. And he is not going to be a puppet to the deep state, and he wouldn't do war the way they wanted, and that's all it takes for something like this. And that's why it's extra egregious when guys like Cornel West go along with this shit and don't have the balls to tell the truth about it. Because if they'll do this to Donald Trump, a billionaire, you don't think they'll do it to Cornel West or Bernie Sanders
Why is he running?
Or anybody who actually stands up against the establishment. And if Cornel West was ever a threat to the establishment, they would just criminalize him too. And he doesn't have the balls to say it.
Yeah, no kidding.
He doesn't have the integrity to say it because he lives in an ivory tower and he is the establishment. He doesn't have the fucking balls as a goddamn YouTube comedian to say it. He won't say it. He still won't say it. He'll still pretend Joe Biden's a milquetoast neoliberal and somehow Donald Trump's a fascist, but this is the real thing he should be talking about, and he doesn't have the nutsack to do it. I'm not afraid of Cornel West. He's afraid of me. Ornato said White House, which is why he wouldn't come on my fucking show for months, and when he came on my show, he couldn't run away fast enough with his tail between his legs.
Did someone say you were afraid of him?
No.
Oh.
No.
Some weird troll.
Ornato said White House concerns about January 6th were related to fears that left-wing groups would clash with Trump protesters and that no one in the White House anticipated a riot at the Capitol. Antifa and other left-wing groups were planning protests for the same day. Left-wing groups have been involved in violent assaults on Trump supporters following public protests.
Including shooting a guy in the head. Remember that?
Yes. Meadows wanted to know if she needed any more guardsmen, Ornato testified. And I remember the number 10,000 coming up of, the president wants to make sure that you have enough. He's willing to ask for 10,000. I remember that number. Now that you said it, it reminded me of it. And that she was all set. She had, I think it was like 350 or so for intersection control and those types of things, not in the law enforcement capacity at the time. Ornato was correct. Bowser declined the offer, asking only for a few hundred National Guard and requiring them to serve as very limited capacity.
There's more in the subways of New York than they had.
Right. So the D.C. mayor turned him down. No DCNG personnel shall be armed during the mission, and at no time will DCNG personnel or assets be engaged in domestic surveillance searches or seizures of U.S. persons, Bowser wrote in her letter requesting the D.C. National Guard. Bowser's decision to decline help from the White House did not end the Trump team's effort to secure troops ahead of the protest. When the D.C. mayor declined Trump's offer of 10,000 troops, Ornato said the White House requested a quick reaction force out of the Defense Department in case it was needed. The only thing I remember with the DOD, Department of Defense, and the National Guard was even though the mayor didn't want any more National Guard in D.C., that a request was made to have kind of a, for lack of a better term, a quick reaction force out of the Joint Base Andrews, being that it was a military installation, Ornato told investigators in the previously concealed interview. I remember Chief Meadows talking to the Department of Defense about that, I believe. I remember Chief Meadows letting me know that, hey, there was going to be National Guard that's going to be at the Joint Base Andrews in case they're going to need some more. The mayor would need any. We're going to make sure they're out there. Meadows was concerned that the D.C. would be unprepared for the size of the crowd coming to the protest, the controversial 2020 election. The January 6th committee prevented an investigation into Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's preparation, or lack thereof, for Capitol security ahead of the event. So it's unclear if she was as concerned about keeping the peace as Meadows and the Trump White House were. Once the Capitol was breached, the Trump White House pushed for immediate help from Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller and grew frustrated at the slow deployment of that help, according to the testimony. So then I remember the chief saying, hey, I'm calling Secretary of Defense to get that quick reaction force in there, Ornato said. Later he said, and then I remember the chief telling Miller, get them in there to secure the Capitol now. Still later, he said the constant was, where is the National Guard? Why isn't, we've got to get control of this. And again, quote, but Meadows understood the urgency, that's for sure. And he kept, getting Miller on the phone, wanting to know where they were. Why aren't they there yet? Cheney hid this testimony and instead asserted in her report that President Trump never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or any other day, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist. Cheney and her committee did devote 2,000 words in their final report to an unsubstantiating conspiracy theory that President Trump had physically overcome a Secret Service agent in the zeal to join protesters at the Capitol. Asked if he ever heard about anything about Trump deciding to go to the Capitol that day, Ornato said that he hadn't. Ornato said Trump had driven by a previous rally, had flown over another, and that handlers had previously decided against him joining that day's event. Breaking, former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Son tells Tucker Carlson that Paul Irving and Michael Stenger, the two sergeant-at-arms at the House and the Senate who worked directly under Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, denied his two requests for National Guard on January 3rd because of the optics. Here we go.
Congress passed a law. It's 2 U.S. Code 1970. Look it up. Just make sure you look it up before December 22 when they changed it. So what was in effect on the 6th? That requires me to go and get approval for bringing in National Guard or federal assistance in advance. I have to go to the Capitol Police Board and get approval from congressional leadership in advance, like I did on January 3rd. I'm denied twice because of optics and because the intelligence didn't support it. So think about that.
Let me ask you, who made that decision? Who denied you?
I was denied by Paul Irving, House Sergeant-at-Arms, and also Mike Stenger, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms.
And who do
on January 3rd.
Who do they work for?
It would have been working for Pelosi on the House side. That Pelosi was the #1 boss. And then McConnell on the Senate side.
Ah.
So
effectively, Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi shut down your request.
My request was shut down, one, because of optics, which is interesting. You're going to hear that term come up a couple more times. Optics, or the look of the National Guard on the Hill.
So there you go. So if you need any more proof that January 6th was a setup by the establishment and the FBI and the CIA, then I don't know what else you need.
Muriel Bowser is a well-known corrupt mayor in D.C. Well-known.
Muriel Bowser, of course, they're all corrupt. Nancy Pelosi, yeah. Mitch McConnell, that's the uniparty. That's the uniparty, the same donor class that runs the Democrats, runs the Republicans. They run the whole goddamn country, and they don't want Trump because he's not a puppet of the deep state. He won't be, and he wouldn't do the wars the way they wanted him to. And so now they had to do this January 6th. This isn't something new. They've done this before. And they did the same thing down in Brazil. And now they're criminalizing their political opposition. This is what they do. This is what it's called. And this is why I brought it up to Cornel West. And I thought he would be an ally in calling this out. But of course he's not. He's a coward. And he's part of the establishment. And he doesn't have the balls that I have to call a spade and call out what's actually happening, because he never will go against the establishment in a meaningful way, ever. Just like Bernie Sanders will never, because they got their balls in a vice. Cornel West owes $500,000 to the IRS. They got his balls, and Bernie Sanders' wife was threatened with prosecution over her financial shenanigans at that, and so they got his balls in a vice, and that's why those guys will never, in a meaningful way, stand up ever against the establishment.
I just want to say,
because if they ever planned on doing it, they know the same thing they're doing to Trump, they would do to them right now. And so they know they'll never stand up, and that's why they won't say anything about it. Go ahead, Kurt.
I just want to say for the record, I never believed in either of them guys.
I did.
I knew they were fakes.
I didn't.
The whole time. I thought
didn't.
Bernie was just too weak. I didn't know he was such a phony. I thought he was just like a nice guy, but that's an all shucks routine. He's an actual evil fucker.
I didn't know.
A lot of people didn't.
I believed in Bernie Sanders. I believed in Cornel West. I believed in a lot of people.
Brianna Joy Gray, who I like, still doesn't know. Still hasn't figured it out.
She hasn't figured out what?
Either
those two guys are fucking con artists.
Bernie. I've never seen her really condemn him like she should. She's too good for this world.
Well, that's too bad. But anyway, the villain here isn't Brianna Joy Gray. The villain here are people like Cornel West and Bernie Sanders, who have a platform, who people look up to, who have a voice, and who should be saying something, and who aren't saying anything. Aren't saying a goddamn thing.
Have the balls of a Trump. How about the good guys? Not the bad Trump man.
Yeah.
How about the good guys have the balls to say something?
Hey, come see us do a live stand-up show. We're going to be in Stockholm, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, London, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, and Denver, Colorado. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.